Okay, now it's October. It's spooky month. Thanks to some reviews from my channel, I've been able to kind of get in the mood with gems such as Limerick Cadence Mansion and then also Ghost at Dawn. Both really cool games. You should check out my reviews if nothing else, and then go check out the games. But that's not why you're here today. Today you want to learn everything there is to know, or everything you really need to know, about Alan Wake 2. Now, I'll be the first to admit, it's been a while since I've played the first Alan Wake, and I actually plan on playing it in preparation for the new game, and I've been kind of spoiler-free up until this point with the marketing and everything, but I felt like it was actually time to kind of jump in, get myself a little bit hyped up, and kind of look out for things that I need to be looking out for in the first game. Now, with that being said, Alan Wake 2 is coming from Remedy Entertainment, and of course it's going to be published by Epic Games. This is part of their partnership, which included multiple games, and it was also Alan Wake Remastered. Now, with that being said, you're going to be able to play the game on next-gen consoles, with Xbox Series X and S, as well as PS5, and then of course also on PC, but where that comes in with Epic is that it is exclusively on the Epic Game Store. There's no reason to believe that this will be a timed exclusivity thing, so if you're on PC and you want to play it, you might as well not wait, unless you're waiting for a sale of course, and just get it on the Epic Game Store. Now, with that being said, there's also a few other ticks in the release of the game that's interesting. First off, there's no physical release, which isn't surprising with the game, but this was done in efforts to reduce the cost of the game, as it's coming out at $49.99 US or $50, which is $20 less than the now standard of $70 US for a game release of a AAA scale. As someone who kind of follows Remedy Entertainment, it's interesting that they keep doing decisions like this, as Control was really big with the idea that they had a really low operating cost for the game. I believe it was $30 million, I think off the top of my head. You can fact check me, but it was a really low amount of money for what Control actually was with the scope and scale. And to me, that's just so interesting, but that's not the point of the video. Now, with that being said, Alan Wake 2 has been revealed for a couple years now, and it's finally coming out this October 27th of 2023. And you may be thinking, oh well, that's not a lot of time before actual Halloween to get some playtime in. Well, the game's going to run you about 20 hours, so you're going to want to hope that you at least have that weekend to have some good times. And given the fact that that's honestly, if I remember correctly, almost twice the length of the first game, I think it's insane the price point they're getting away with this game. Now, with that being said though, there is a $70 version of the game though, which is pretty interesting. For right now, there is a pre-purchase content, which is just a few different skins, and then a survival resources pack for one of the characters. But with the exclusive content for the deluxe edition, you get the base game and the expansion pass, which includes the Night Springs expansion and the Lake House expansion, which are both additional story contents. And then also a Nordic shotgun skin for Saga, as well as a few different charms and outfits for Saga and Alan accordingly. Now, with that being said, I feel like we have all of the slight need-to-knows out of the way. If you want to learn a little bit more about the story premise, I think it's important to note that this is Remedy's first official going at a survival horror game. When I played Alan Wake originally a couple years back, I definitely felt the tinge of horror to it. It definitely felt a little more, I know most people say Twin Peaks. I almost got the vibe of X-Files, just with that kind of, far off, misty town. But I definitely see where the Twin Peaks thing is. I just am not familiar. It doesn't matter. But with that being said, I think that from the trailers that I've seen, it definitely seems like there's a lot more going on, both narratively and then also just visually speaking. And I think that's going to help kind of conveying the horror of this game. And genuinely, in some of the Alan Wake sections, this game looks creepy. But before we get into all that, let's go ahead and go to the store page and kind of break down the absolute basics of what the marketing of the game is. A string of ritualistic murders threatens Bright Falls, a small town community surrounded by Pacific Northwest wilderness. This is from the first game if you haven't played it. Saga Anderson, an accomplished FBI agent with a reputation for solving impossible cases, arrives to investigate the murders. Anderson's case spirals into a nightmare when she discovers pages of a horror story that starts to come true all around her. And interestingly, in a little bit of the gameplay I saw, it's almost as if characters are talking to her as if these things have already happened. So it's almost like she's living through a story that's being written as she goes, and also in the past tense. It's really interesting, and I think the way that Saga reacts to it is going to play very interestingly, and I'm almost wondering if her story is entirely fiction created by Alan Wake, or if it is something deeper to do with Bright Falls instead. Now, as for Alan Wake, a lost writer trapped in a nightmare beyond our own world, he's going to write a dark story in an attempt to shape the reality around him and escape his prison. With a dark horror hunting him, Wake is trying to retain his sanity and beat the devil at his own game. And we'll get in more to the gameplay differences of these two characters very shortly, but continuing on, Anderson and Wake are two heroes on two very desperate journeys in two separate realities, connected at heart in ways that neither of them can truly understand, reflecting each other, echoing each other, and affecting the worlds around them. I think this game is going to be so interesting with how it may handle that. If there's anybody that I can trust to do a complete parallel story, it's definitely Remedy. But I'm not the only one seemingly fueled by this horror story, as the supernatural darkness invades Bright Falls, corrupting the locals and threatening the loved ones of both Anderson and Wake. Light is their weapon and their safe haven against the darkness they face. Trapped in the sinister horror story where there are only victims and monsters, but can they really break out to be the heroes they truly need to be? And right there, with all of that as a premise alone, I have to say this is super interesting. Once again, we see in the gameplay the return of lights and the ability to kind of burn off, I don't want to say the armor, but you need to weaken enemies to basically reveal actual weak points, which in the first game, aiming wasn't so much of an issue as much as it is going to be in this game. It definitely reminds me, especially with the inventory pop-up on the screen, a lot more of like the Resident Evil remake styled games. There's even kind of a dodge mechanic, which I think is really interesting. It's definitely going to make the combat feel a lot more deep than the first game's ever was, and I think, honestly, that was the biggest weakness of the first game. So to kind of summarize, you have to solve a deadly mystery. What begins as a small town murder investigation for Saga rapidly spirals into a nightmare journey. Uncover the source of the supernatural darkness in the psychological horror story filled with intense suspense and unexpected twists. As I've already said, we're playing as two characters, both Alan Wake and Saga Anderson. And with that, it's interesting that it mentions that we're going to see events unfold from different perspectives. You're going to experience two beautiful yet terrifying worlds, each with its own rich cast of characters and deadly threats. Discover majestic landscapes of Cauldron Lake in the Pacific Northwest and the idyllic towns of Bright Falls and Watery. Contrasting very sharply, we have to attempt to escape the nightmarish cityscape of the Dark Place. Now, we haven't seen as much about the Dark Place as we have with, Saga's gameplay at Bright Falls, but I have to say, I really think that with Alan Wake, we're going to be getting a lot more of the live-action style of storytelling that Remedy has become kind of known for, and I think that's going to be fine. I think that's actually going to play more into the fact that that's going to be the horror segment, even if Sagas can be terrifying as well. And really, that's everything that you need to know from the story page. I know that's not everything that there is to know about the game. I could look through the gameplay and tell you how many different weapons there are shown so far, but really, I don't think that's important. I think what is important to kind of round out the rest of this video is the differences I'm noticing from Alan Wake to Saga Anderson and how their gameplay differs. Of course, both of them do carry weapons, although seemingly they are different weapons if you're curious, so maybe much like The Last of Us Part 2, two very different gameplay styles between the two. But also, from a narrative perspective, both of them seem to function a little bit differently. Saga has the Mind Place, which is a seamless loading into a little room where she can kind of sum up all of her investigative thoughts. And it's there that you can kind of profile characters that you've met and talked to or found evidence against or for. And then you've also got your classic, string on the wall crime board or, clue board that you have to kind of fill out as new information is presented. And from what I'm seeing, anytime you find relevant information or something that may be helpful in the moment, there's always a ping on the screen saying, hey, you might want to check out the Mind Place. Now, on the other side of things, we have Alan Wake while he's in the Dark Place. And when he's there, he can actually kind of access the ability to rewrite the story as he goes, as they've mentioned in the marketing and what I've read so far. But watching the trailers of what little bit of gameplay there is for this, it seemingly is like you can kind of choose which version of the environment you want to be in. One of the instances was in the train station. He chooses a version where everything is kind of beaten up and destroyed, and with that, the trains are able to be progressed through and he can move his way forward, and then he can switch the world to however he wants from there. Truly, I think this is so interesting, and I love the technical prowess shown with the very instant load times from both the Mind Place and the stuff going on in the Dark Place. But with that being said, that's really everything you need to know leading up to Alan Wake 2. Thank you for watching if you did watch, and with that being said, consider subscribing. I don't usually do bigger games, but sometimes, I'm really excited. This is what I'm really excited for, and if you are interested in my thoughts on other games, you might want to check out some of my reviews. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.